Today, we're visiting the Lyman and Merrie Museum of Springfield History, part of the Springfield Museums in Springfield, Massachusetts. Esta Manthos Indian Motorcycle Collection was donated to the Springfield Museums in 2006.
Americana Project, 21st Century. Telling the story of America, one town at a time.
Today, we are visiting the Esta Manthos Indian Motorcycle Collection. It is the largest collection of Indian motorcycles and memorabilia in the world. In this three-part video, Part 1 talked about the early years of motorcycling and the growth of the Indian name. The second part highlighted some of the many motorcycles on display at the museum. In this third part, we'll share some Indian motorcycle stories, including the story of Charles and Esta Manthos, who donated this collection to the Springfield Museums, as well as other famed riders and the demise of Indian motorcycle production. Charles Manthos rode his first Indian motorcycle as a teenager in the 1930s. He immediately became an enthusiast. In 1953, after Indian closed their factory on Hendy Street, Charles purchased the property, using it to run his own business, Solar Metal Treating Corporation. A professional metallurgist by trade, he had a vision of bringing a new, locally manufactured, Indian motorcycle back into production. Working with two former Indian employees, Earl Pop Armstrong and design engineer Jimmy Hill, he created a prototype based on the 1953 Indian Chief, the last of the original Indian production. He hoped to take it to market in 1975, but his dream was never realized. In 1975, he opened the Indian Motorcycle Museum in the former Hendy Street plant. He opened it with his wife, Esta, and it included a vast collection the two had acquired. Esta Manthos was member of the Women's International Motorcycle Association, Laughing Indian Riders Club, and with her husband, Charlie, co-founded the former Indian Motorcycle Museum here in Springfield, Massachusetts. According to her obituary, she was involved in the preservation of the history of this world-famous motorcycle that only been made in Springfield from 1901 to 1953, when manufacturing ceased. She was friends with most of the former national champions who rode the Indian motorcycle. Many are now inductees in the Hall of Fame of the museum. Charles Manthos passed away in 1996, but Esta continued to work with the museum until they closed in 2006. That's when Esta Manthos donated much of the former museum's collection to the Springfield Museums, now housed here in the Lyman and Merrie Museum. Louise Shervin of Rochester, New York, rode in the sidecar of her husband's Indian Chief in the 1920s. He bought her a solo Indian in 1932. Traveling all over the U.S. and Canada, she became the first female rider to reach the far north, the Temagami Forest of Canada, in 1937. She was an associate editor for the Motorcyclist, one of America's leading motorcycling magazines. In 1950, she founded the Women's International Motorcycle Association, the WIMA. Louise owned 3 Indians, including this one on display. She always carried her lucky rabbit's foot in her saddlebags and never had an accident in her 225,000 miles of riding. Helen Kiss, known in the 1940s as the Pink Lady because of her factory-painted pink Indian, was the daughter of a Pottstown, Pennsylvania Indian dealer. Helen was no stranger to the wigwam. She came to Springfield in 1937 to take delivery of her high school graduation present, a white Indian. She was a founding member and treasurer of the Motor Maids, which started in 1940 with 51 charter members, to unite women motorcyclists in promoting motorcycle interests. Helen won many trophies, including the Carroll DuPont Trophy for American Girl Rider at the New England Rally at Laconia, New Hampshire in 1941. Freddie Marsh was a well-known figure in motorcycling in the Northeast. He started riding Harleys as a teenager and worked at a Harley-Davidson dealership in Connecticut. In 1926, he was approached by Indian to open a dealership in Hartford. From then on, Marsh sold Indians during the week and raced them on weekends. He competed in amateur flat track races and hill climbs in his youth and continued to ride in hill climbing events until he was 88. Freddie sold other cycle brands after Indian closed in 1953, but it was on his 50cc Indian that he rode 75 laps every day in the parking lot of his dealership until he was more than 100 years old. Charles Hendy, during the company's heyday, purchased property on Page Boulevard in East Springfield and built a plant dubbed Hendyville. It was only in operation for 3 years and was sold in late 1916. In the 1920s, Rolls-Royce produced their vehicles at the plant. The Lyman and Merrie Museum also has some of those cars on display. To see our video featuring those cars, check out the link below. After World War II, Ralph Rogers bought the company from Paul DuPont. In 1945, Rogers anticipated the need for new motorcycle models that are small, inexpensive, and lightweight. He contracted the services of Indian's former chief engineer, G. Briggs Weaver, to design the new cycles. In the summer of 1948, the Torque series of Indian verticals rolled off the assembly line. They included the 220 VB Aero single model 149 and the spring frame 440 CC Scout vertical twin 249. In order to sell the new models, Indian hired the services of a renowned New York advertising agency, which launched a glamorous marketing campaign. Publicity shots of movie stars, models, and football players were featured in Indian sales literature and in popular magazines. Motion picture idols Jane Russell, Cary Grant, Alan Ladd, and Robert Ryan were among those hired for this marketing effort. By late 1949, Indian's glorious era was coming to an end. First, the post-war Aeros and Scouts, built to compete with British imports, had serious quality issues. Then, when the British pound was devalued in 1949, the prices of English cycles sold in America dropped by 20%, and Indian could not match the imports' lower prices. Accused of mismanagement, Ralph Rogers resigned as Indian's president, and the company was sold and split into two entities. The manufacturing sector was acquired by Atlas Tightflex Corporation. They closed the Hendyville factory in East Springfield. A small production run of Chiefs and Warriors was manufactured in downtown Springfield in an attempt to keep the Indian brand going, but the majority of Indian dealers dropped the franchise in favor of the British imports. Faced with poor sales, Atlas closed down its Tightflex production of Indian motorcycles in August 1953, ending the manufacture of Indians in Springfield. British conglomerate Brockhouse Limited, which had acquired a controlling interest in Indian in the 1940s, formed the Indian Sales Corporation and used it to distribute British motorcycles in America, including Royal Enfield, Norton Matchless, AJS, Douglas, and Excelsior. Throughout the 1950s, it rebadged British bikes as Indians and sold them in America by such names as the Brave, the Tomahawk, and the Papoose. The Royal Enfield Indian, made in England, was produced from 1955 to 1959.
Hey, thank you for watching my video. If you like it, please hit that like button. If you want to see some more, you also should hit that subscribe button. That helps me out a lot. But if you liked it, share it, because I'm sure your friends would too. This is Owen. We'll see you next in time.